In the middle of the 70s, I realized that I was going to be a filmmaker, but an experimental filmmaker. And I realized that making experimental films mean, at that time in France, to have to fight against a lot of things. And presumably, the first things to fight was to try to create a space where those films could be seen, could be received. So it was important to, while making film, to think about the condition of reception of your own work, creating a space for this work, this type of work to be recognized or at least seen. It seems that it was interesting to work with other issues and think about film as a tool to reflect how one can think and not to portray some kind of social reality or existential love problems, which is a tradition within French films. So my first film happened to be done in '76, and it was at a time where within experimental film scene there was a dominant movement that you might have heard about, which was called structural film. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a certain type of film which is working about the definition and about the existence or what it means to be a film or to make a film. And this type of filmmaking was at the verge of breaking out. That work was initially done, it's just a quarter, a fragment of the image, a quarter of it was the original. And I realized, because I'm a bit slow, 10 years later, that by twinning it and mirroring it, I could have already a figure of Bach music. And by making it 4 times mirror and reverse, I could have something which will be a kind of installation where I will project in the middle of a space, on a screen in the middle of the space, 2 projectors on one side, 2 projectors on the other one, the same film, but it will have this 4 type of image, which was a way for me to make films becoming a sculptural element and also something of an installation. And questioning the space means that you could also question the screen itself and its location within the space. And the fact, for example, it was quite interesting last week when I came here, the people of SOMA told me that the screening was always here. And I was saying, why not there? And that's a little thing of nothing, but imagine when you arrive in a cinema and you have to face exactly the format and the things which are shaped by the industry, and mostly not only the industry of the film, but shaped by the industry of Canon, Kodak, and so on. So you are depending only of the mechanical tools that the industry is producing. It's like you have not the right, or it seems impossible to question those matter, those manner, and those preconceived manner to receive and to project a work. And I think as an artist, you know that one of the first questions also is to question how you are dealing with the presentation of your work, how a work can be seen or transformed by the way it is presented. That film was made in 2006 after a month of riots in France following a kind of assassination by the cops of 2 young teenagers grilled in an electricity place. And when I made that film, I thought there was a relation really strong between what were saying the favelados of Rio de Janeiro and the actuality of their fight against police and what was happening in France at the same time. And I thought it was an interesting mixture to have those two sound and image related. Something else happened in the mid-80s, which is going to change the way I think about film also, which is the AIDS crisis. I could not ignore it as a gay, and I could not ignore it also because a lot of films were made in the States or in different countries dealing with those issues and questioning some the way we were thinking about making image. And it brought to the experimental film scene a kind of crisis in which there was those people which refused to get involved within social issues and were privileging a kind of mythical view of what is art and what has to be an experimental film, a pure object of experience within the realm of the moving image, with very few content which were dealing socially directly. It was possible to express yourself as a movement of dealing with with one's feelings and how you could have an immediate expression of yourself through the camera without the mediation of an actor or of a person. But it was rather difficult to be dealing with social issues or with political issues. And what the punk, the feminist, the woman filmmaking and the gay filmmaking brought was those other realm within experimental films, which are going progressively to be transformed by the art world in this fascination for documentary. You know that today, or since let's say 10 years, if you are not making documentary within the art, you are not a filmmaker, neither an artist. You have to be dealing with those issues. But that's come from an understanding of what was dealt within a certain type of experimental film and video art in the late 80s and 90s. I could not stand what was happening in Palestine at the time, and I decided to answer with a film which is relatively short and which seems to have an echo about what has happened those last 3 days in Palestine and in Gaza. The film is called Derubada Now, and it's based on a project, an art project made by Edson Barros about a preservation of a tree, which is called the Imburana. And in order to preserve that tree, he bought with found crowding a landscape to make this place, this site, an ecological sanctuary to preserve that tree. And I decided to make a film around these issues, and for which I will show you an English version. And the sound will be by Thomas Koenner, with whom I have been working since a few years, 10 or 15 years, and from which you have maybe recognized the sound in the first film I showed you. Or maybe not.